when we're struggling, whether that's at work or, in a relationship, in a friendship, with our kids, no matter what that might be, honesty is always the way through. And so I kind of picture my heart sometimes as I'm pushing myself to be vulnerable, and I can see all of this scaffolding that's been protecting me my whole life. Like, what am I afraid to say? Like, what am I afraid of? Am I afraid of rejection? Am I afraid that they're not going to think that I'm as qualified or as good as what I have presented myself to be? And I see this scaffolding, and I really just visualize like knocking it all down and just being open to this possibility that in sharing my truth, like, the worst thing that could happen is probably not that bad.
Hi there, it's Kelly Resendez, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. So we are going to talk about the power of vulnerability today. I remember the first time that I heard Brene Brown talk about, the importance of vulnerability, and I really didn't know what it would mean in my life until I got a little farther along on my journey. And the truth is that I always, before I would say that I had my awakening, wanted to look like I had it all together. And I had a really challenging time asking for help. And so part of being vulnerable is really being honest with yourself that we need other people. We need resources and opportunities. And there's never going to be a point in which you are going to create the most abundant life that you possibly could without the help of others. And so I'm going to share a little bit about my vulnerability journey with you a little bit. So the first thing that I would say is that I had to really understand what being vulnerable meant. And that meant taking off the mask. That meant standing in my truth, no matter where I was. And it wasn't easy for me. Like, it honestly was like I had always tried to be the one that gave everyone else support. And I was there for them, but I wasn't the one on the other side of it that asked for help. And this definitely was a challenge for me. I would tell you that I probably had my biggest awakening. I lost my home in a fire in 2007, and everyone around me wanted to help. And I had to surrender. I had to surrender to, maybe I didn't necessarily require it, but it was something that I had to allow because people want to help. People that love you want to be there for you. And if you put up a wall and act like you don't need any help, then you're going to minimize the amount of success that you can have in your life. And so for me, again, being vulnerable would just be actually telling people how I felt and what was going on with me. And so I had to start slow. I mean, some of you out there that are listening might say it was really easy for me to lean on other people, but for myself, it wasn't. And so I had to start small and just start to force myself. I made it a goal that I was going to share with other people what I was doing and what I needed help with in every conversation. So I kind of called it an ask give. So it wasn't necessarily just about telling them what I needed, but I would ask them, what's a resource or, connection that would change the ballgame for you? And then I would in turn tell them what I was looking for at the same time. And just that little bit of opening, I would tell you, made a massive impact in my career. The more conversations and connections that I made just kind of opened up this energy of being able to receive on a greater level. And so you do have to set the intention that you're going to ask for help. Now, help comes in a lot of different forms. Sometimes we need help and we actually need to hire a professional to be able to do that. I have a trainer that comes. I had to be vulnerable enough to say, like, I'm never going to work out on my own. That's honest. I had to be honest with myself. Like, I needed to hire a coach in certain areas in my life to get me through some challenging things that I probably didn't want to do on my own. So again, part of that vulnerability is in self-awareness, is understanding where you really need to speak up and ask for help in your life. And so the last thing that I would share about the vulnerability piece is that when we're struggling, whether that's at work or, in a relationship, in a friendship, with our kids, no matter what that might be,
honesty is always the way through. And so I kind of picture my heart sometimes as I'm pushing myself to be vulnerable, and I can see all of this scaffolding that's been protecting me my whole life. Like, what am I afraid to say? Like, what am I afraid of? Am I afraid of rejection? Am I afraid that they're not going to think that I'm as qualified or as good as what I have presented myself to be? And I see this scaffolding, and I really just visualize like knocking it all down and just being open to this possibility that in sharing my truth, like the worst thing that could happen is probably not that bad. And so I've really been able to navigate this a lot better. And I am forever grateful to Brene Brown opening this door for so many people, because at the end of the day, for me, love and connection are the two most important things that I really, tend to in my life. And then knowing I can also make an impact in other people's lives. I have this YouTube channel just simply because I've learned so many lessons on this 21-year journey that I've been in personal growth that I want to share with other people, because hopefully for you, maybe you can look at your life today and ask, like, where do I need to be more vulnerable? Where can I put myself more out there and face whatever the unknown is? And so I'm going to give you a couple areas that I think will really help you improve, in multiple areas. Number one, in your career, being vulnerable enough to go for something that you might not be ready for is a huge, important goal for you. When we look at women and statistics, women are less likely to apply for a job if they don't meet all the requirements, where our male counterparts might apply for it when they only meet one or two. So you've got to be vulnerable enough to put yourself out there. The second thing in your career is asking for a raise or a promotion, really sitting down with your leader and finding out where they think you are, where you need to go in order for you to be able to progress. That's huge. Another piece of vulnerability in your career might be to start a side hustle or to start your own company once and for all, because you know that you've wanted to do this for so long. Well, that vulnerability that you got to put into trusting that this is going to work out, that you're going to have the resources, you're going to have the opportunities that are going to get you to that next level. That's huge. So that's career. I would say those are a few big things that you can do. When it comes to your relationships, again, just having honest conversations with people, and really just being able to tell them what your concerns are. Now, one of my coaches, Ellen Petrie Leanne's, kind of taught me a strategy where when you start with a shared vision with the person that you need to have this vulnerable conversation with, it always helps. And so that would be an example like, hey, I think we both want to experience more joy and connection in our life, and I'm worried. Like, we haven't been spending as much time together, or it doesn't feel like we've been communicating as well. And then asking, is that something you worry about too? And then letting them go down that path, and then really just agreeing what would a next best step look like for us to get back to this mutual shared vision, and then just kind of knowing how are we going to know it's working as well. Another area that you can be vulnerable is in your finances. A lot of times we don't talk about money a lot. In Go Abundance Women, the mastermind community that I co-founded, we put our net worth and our income out there for everyone to see. It takes vulnerability to do that, but it also takes guts to share where you want to go and find out how maybe they can support you. Maybe somebody's been someplace that you want to get to, and they can give you some of those things as well. So those are just 3 areas that you can really use the power of vulnerability to shift your life. So comment below, hit me up with questions, but I would definitely just make it an intentional practice that on a daily basis that you're practicing the ask give, and you're stepping up and really going after what you want, which takes maximum vulnerability, because we don't always know how things are going to work out. And the truth is, we never will. So why not start today? We'll see you on the next episode.